Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of A Few Short Minutes, the pod, where I just want to remind you it takes just a few short minutes of intention and mindfulness every day to actually rewire your brain for a more positive life and whatever that means to you. And today we have Susan Day, who is experiencing camera difficulties. So we're just going to stare at a picture of her instead. But the audio is coming through beautifully. So, you friends, this is what it looks like. Not every day can be perfect, and that's a-okay. Some days you just deal with what you got, and today is one of those days. So right? Let me tell you about Susan and what amazing things she's going to impart today. So she is a mindful arts therapist and an author. She's created 5 mindful art therapy activity books, and she's working on a book about how mindful arts therapy can build emotional resilience in preteens. Man, I could have used this. It's being released April 1st, in April, excuse me. And that is exciting. And she's an Aussie, and she rescues dogs and cats. Mine, you probably will hear at some point in time. It is a rainy day here, so they are sleeping, but also trying to get them to go outside is like pulling teeth today because they are very pretty princess, and they don't want to go potty in the rain outside. One absolutely refused to come out from under the covers when I opened the door and she smelled the rain. She went right back in. She was
I have a border collie working dog, and he has been a shop dog when I was managing, and he would sleep in the shop, and he goes everywhere with me. And people say, "Oh, that dog should be on a farm," and I'm like, "He doesn't like getting his feet wet." It's just, I'm sorry, he's very pretty. He does, and he's smart, but he doesn't like getting out. He doesn't like getting out the out. I took my grandchildren to. I live about half an hour from the south coast, the beach.
okay.
It's an ocean beach. It's the actual. It's the southern Arctic beach. Well, the bit that hits Australia at the bottom, and the children loved it. They're running around in the water playing, and he just lost it. He just kept looking at them, and the tide just, the waves are crashing in, and he's like, "Ah, I don't know what to do." So,
Go nip at the heels to get them back in the line where they should be. Safety.
that, wouldn't you? So yeah, they're funny things. I love animals. They're just lovely. Yeah, they're just so real, and they just get you so grounded. But anyway, we've got off track already.
Yeah. Oh, I don't consider that off track at all. At all. Yes, we are a big animal family as well, and we had a border collie for 12 years, but he was deaf and blind in one eye. So
Oh,
we actually taught him sign language.
yep, yep. I used to be a canine behaviourist, and I have a blind dog, a very old spaniel. She was actually born without eyes, which is really interesting. So I took her on. She's 13 and a half now, and she's crippled up with arthritis. But being a spaniel, she always has to have the last word anyway. Um, it's, it's just fascinating how well they can manage and cope, isn't it? As you would know,
It,
yeah.
yeah, Spook was all white, so the same gene that made him albino actually had a deaf component on it,
It
and
does,
hearing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we think somebody knocked him on the head and tried to like do
Oh,
away with him because my parents found him on the side of the road and he was literally a puffball. He
oh,
was like 4 weeks old maybe when they found him. So yeah. Anyway, we had a dachshund at the same time, and so she became his ears. So he
yeah.
would watch her for her to alert, and then
Ah,
he would go after badgers or whatever was in the country. So yeah, it's fascinating. It's
yeah,
fascinating. And when she died, that was rough for him because
I
he
bet.
didn't have her ears any longer. But yeah, he was such a sweet. But he would nip at the kids' heels to get them
Oh,
back into
yes,
whatever
yes.
place line that he
Yeah.
had constructed as the right area, and it was just the funniest. It was the funniest thing. So yeah, we love dogs around here too, for sure. Do you use them in your practice? Do you use animals in your art therapy to maybe calm somebody down? Or I have a friend that has an equine rescue, and she uses the horses in coaching as coaching therapy for troubled teens. So do you use that with your preteen clients, or have you considered?
Absolutely. Yeah. My border collie at the moment he loves people.
Uh-oh, did I lose you? Am I frozen? That's possible. That's possible. I'm not sure what's going on.
Like a big teddy bear. Um, yeah, he does really well, and he's just so friendly, and it can I mean, any animal in the room really changes the atmosphere. It's really interesting, really, really interesting. Yeah, and it's calming. It's relaxing and friendly. Yeah, it's just people are funny. I used to in Australia we had a program called it was about teaching children to be safe around dogs, and you took a dog in, but you spent a good 40 odd minutes talking to the children about how to approach dogs, how to be, how to do this, don't run up to a strange dog, etc., etc. And at the end, if they were good, making inverted commas, because they were always good, they could pat the dog. Well, you'd think these kids had never seen a dog before in their lives. They were just so excited to pat this dog.
Listen, Susan, that's me on a daily basis, okay? I'm the crazy woman that's like, oh, like don't talk to the people. I don't talk to the
Yeah.
owners. I talk straight to the dog. That's all I want to talk about. Oh, you're such a good girl, aren't you? Aren't you such a good girl? And then I'll look up and say thank you, and I'll walk away. But it's me. I'm the crazy. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
those
I'm the
kids.
same. Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah. And I love the fact that now people have harnesses with their dog's name on it. So I'll be like, "Morning, Oliver." I'll just the people are.
And Oliver's mom.
Yeah,
So they
yeah.
don't have a name. It's
We had
Oliver's mom.
we had a big dog walking group in a town I used to live in, and it's still going now. Um, and we got the opportunity to use an area for off leash. So it's about 2 kilometres near a creek, heavily built up on either side. And it was, but we were all known by, there was Sooty Sue because her dog was named Sooty. There was there was Rob O'Brien because his dog was Brian and he was Rob something. I don't. Nobody knew everybody's full name, and I had a business called Messy Paws, so I was known as Messy Sue.
Messy Sue.
Or Rocky's mum at the time.
Right.
Yeah, this is Rocky's mum. You go, hi. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Nobody has an actual name. It's the dog's name, your mom. Yeah, absolutely. That's hilarious. Robbie O'Brien, because his name is Brian. That is like comedy gold, honestly. That's prime. That's beautiful. I love it. How did you get started in art therapy in particular? That's niche compared to the wide scope of therapy, right? So how did art therapy come into play for you?
when you're experiencing, if you're lonely and particularly with the elderly, I found that when I was working the dog training, the dog was their excuse to get up in the morning, to feed the dog, maybe walk the dog. We had a gentleman who had a scooter and he had a little Shih Tzu that used to sit between his feet, and he would bring it to training. And one of our younger staff it was her job to look after. His name was Lucky. The little dog was named Lucky, and she would train the dog and just pass it back to the. And it was just about all these social connections. This little furry, just general little, not even a special breed or anything. He was just a little black and white Shih Tzu, and he provided this gentleman with so many contacts. And sadly, the gentleman passed away, and the dog community in the area just rallied around and took the dogs and looked after them, and just were a main part of the, I guess, the sort of that process of death for the family. It was really, really interesting that people stepped up beyond being, somebody you walk your dog with or somebody you knew. It was
Yeah.
really, really interesting to see that happen. Yeah.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I can't imagine like just knowing that my pups will be taken care of, by people that love dogs. I can't like that's the
Yeah.
best case scenario,
Isn't
right?
it? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it happened to another lady too. And she hadn't shown up for the dog walk for, I think, a day, and people were a bit worried, and she collapsed. She was still alive at the time, but again, the dog community, didn't have family, so they took care of all her affairs. Do you know, and just made sure the dogs were rehomed and taken care of, and yeah, it was really, you just perhaps people who don't have dogs don't maybe estimate the power that that an animal can bring, and the sense of community it can build around you. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, I think people like that are kind of prone to be helpful anyway, and they end up being dog people, whereas maybe more of an introvert type, um I don't want to say loner, but just more very selective and tend to be cat people. That makes sense to me. It might be completely prejudicial. I might be, but it
Yeah.
just makes sense in my head that those people are not that cat people aren't more helpful. It's just, I don't know. That just kind of makes sense to me in my head about dog people taking care of other dog people.
Yeah.
Because we know these dogs rely on us. Like cats
Yeah.
can handle themselves, but these dogs rely on us.
That's it, isn't it?
Maybe
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it also
I
might be my codependency talking, so there's that as well. But let me just admit that out loud.
That's fine. We've all
What
got
else?
everything. Yeah, I'm the same.
Whatever.
Don't worry.
Okay, good.
It's one of my favorite memes of all time was it just said all dogs are therapy dogs, just some are working undercover. You know, so it's just
That is so very true. That is so very true. Yeah, I know definitely my dogs have saved me in darker times for sure. I even have one that was a catalyst for a lot of change in my life too, which I think is just
wow,
amazing.
that's brilliant, isn't it?
So yeah, and I've had dogs all my life. Yeah, my life isn't full or complete if I don't have a dog. Yeah, it's just not the
Yeah,
same. It's
I don't
just
know
not the
how
same.
people exercise without a dog. I don't know. I'm like, I've seen them walking. We've got a beautiful lake here. We've got two lakes that kind of join together. If I'm feeling very fit, I'll do both. But and I see people walking, and I'm like, but they don't have a dog. I mean, I get,
Right.
I get you need to exercise, but you don't, why, if you're going to run and walk, why not get a dog and do it with somebody?
Hurry, just out there, just by yourself, just
That's right.
walking,
Isn't it?
just walking.
That's it.
That's crazy.
That's
Oh
me.
gosh. So, Susan, talk about art therapy. How did you get into art therapy as a whole?
I think I've been an art therapist since I was about 3.5. I I've always used art as therapy. I've used art when I'm angry. I've used it when I'm happy. I've used it when I'm sad and confused. I've used it when there's been death in the family. I used to work in counselling children that were taken away from their parents by the government. I don't know what you call it in the states. Here,
DCFS,
yeah,
yeah, child.
in Victoria, each state of Victoria, like I suspect the states, it's different, but we call it the out of home care, which is a bit of a,
Yeah.
you know, a strange sort of nice term. So I worked with some really damaged children, and I used art as part of my therapy, because there are stories I'd never share with anybody, because they still give me nightmares. You know
Mm,
what I mean? And I
yeah.
wouldn't inflict that on anyone else. So for me, I'd never heard of art therapy till about 10 years ago, and I was like, oh my lord, this is a thing. Oh, this is just magic. You know? And then I've always been into meditation and mindfulness, and again that kind of took off about that same time. So I use the combination of both, because I think it's a bit like, oh, I don't know, it's kind of, I guess, like doing, if you can combine them both, you get, you don't just get twice as much benefit, you get heaps more. Or heaps is a lot in Australia. So, I know the gorgeous Heath Ledger that I can't wait back. Like he said once in an interview, I can't wait to go back to Australia so I can use the word heaps and people know what I'm talking
People understand.
yeah, everyone knows what I'm talking about. So, and I always, when I'm working with preteens, I say to, I ask them, do you know what meditation is? And the little hands shoot up and they go, oh yeah, it's about sitting quietly. And we all kind of get a picture of a Zen monk in saffron robes sitting at the side, Tibetan mountain. And I say to them, what about mindfulness? And they kind of put their hands up a little bit and they're like, oh, and I said, well, mindfulness is like meditation on the go. Okay, you can do mindfulness while you're at school. You can do mindfulness while you're walking the dog. You can do mindfulness at any time. And it's just about that sort of sense of being conscious about where your stresses are in your body, and about breathing. And of course, we're all breathing, but about that, the power of those deep breaths and ridding the body of toxins, filling your brain full of oxygen, and about, I guess, just it helps with developing self-awareness. And when we become self-aware, we begin to notice our emotions, and then we can regulate them. And then once we get into that stage, we're building emotional resilience, because we know you get to a point, and I'm old ish. I don't look it. Well, I feel it sometimes, but
I'm feeling it today. It is gloomy and rainy here. I live in Vegas, and it's
oh
gloomy and
wow,
rainy here, which never happens. And I'm just like,
yeah.
oh man, I am okay. I got it. I'm feeling it today. So yeah.
It's interesting because I used to feel quite depressed, and of course there is the sad, isn't there, seasonal affective depression. But now I've actually learned to embrace the cold and the rainy days, a little bit, as an excuse not to become more inner reflective and stay in a bit. So yeah, so and that's again a part of that. So that mindful arts therapy, it's interesting actually, because I'm editing. I've got an editor looking at this book, and she's saying to me, "Well, is it art therapy or is it arts therapy?" And there's creative arts therapy and expressive arts therapy, and I'm sort of saying, well, they are a little bit different, but they are kind of all the same thing. But for the sake of this book that you mentioned, the preteen and building emotional resilience, I'm going to have to define them. Um, and I think most people, when they think of arts therapy or art therapy, they think of people painting. Um,
Yeah, in
but it
general,
can go
for sure.
beyond that. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I developed my books is to give people an opportunity or a taste of art therapy. So they're about 20 odd dollars for a print book. I think it's a bit less in the States because of the value of the
Exchange
postage.
rate. Yeah.
Yeah. And then 99 cents for the ebook. And you can have a look through, you can follow the instructions, and you can give it a go, see if it's for you. Because, there isn't a therapist in the world that can see everybody that needs help. In Australia, there are many therapists who closed their books and not taking on new clients. And that was at the beginning of COVID. So you could imagine now,
Oh my God.
yeah, how desperate people are. And there's also an extraordinary cost involved. So
Yeah.
the books look at the expressive arts therapy. They look at using clay. There's one of the books looks at using how to sort of mindfully pat your dog was one of the activities, or your cat, or your guinea pig. Not so much a fish, but anything really. So
I mean, some fish, yeah, for sure.
that's it. So um, that was again sort of my primary goal, was to reach more people and showcase how, in a sense, mindful arts therapies can be. It can be elusively simple. You think, I can just sit here and draw, but is that therapy? Yep, kind of. But what I look like is what I offer in the books is a moment of reflection afterwards, and even a guidance. So when you're doing this, I talk about setting up the room. Um, and I'm working at the moment also with a parenting magazine that's based in New Zealand. So they're big here in New Zealand and they're in the UK. I don't think they've got to the States yet, but they're online, and it's called the Natural Parenting Magazine. And I'm thinking, I remember when my children were little, I didn't know what day it was, what time of the day, you know, the days just meld in. You're so busy, you're so crazy. How
Yeah.
can mindful arts therapy be used in that? They may not have time to sit for an hour with a therapist. Whether I mean, I tend to do all the sessions online, but
Yeah.
still. So I'm looking at saying to them, leave somewhere some coloured markers or crayons or pencils, even just a pen in the back of an envelope, and I want you to do this. So when you perhaps got the kettle on or you're feeding baby, try these little simple exercises. But behind all that is what's really going on. So you don't just sit down and draw. You might think of something that's bothering you. So could be something little, could be something huge, and you just think about that while you're drawing, and or making marks on the paper, or or something, or picking up Play-Doh, and just, you might be angry, so just give that Play-Doh a good squeeze, work that Play-Doh, squash it, mesh it,
Yeah.
So, and it's about release, but it's also about being able to identify and being self-aware and what's really going on inside me now. Um, and it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey for all of us. But, and sometimes you think, I've got this,
Yeah.
and then something happens and you don't got it.
Oh no, you ain't got it.
You ain't got it at all. It's
You ain't got it.
not at all.
I was talking to a fellow coach today. And she was like, "Man, I could just use a break from the growth." And I was like, "Girl, I know." I'm like, "Can I just be done for a hot minute with the growth? Like, I'm good for a second." And here along something else, another layer peels back, another something, and I'm just like, God, I don't want to grow anymore. And then I say that, and then I remember what life was like when I wasn't.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm not
Absolutely.
willing to go back there.
Yeah.
Back in autopilot, every day was the same.
Yeah.
All of my thoughts were the same. All the conversations I was having were the same.
Right.
And I was fucking miserable. I was
Yeah.
fucking miserable. And I don't want to go back there. So I
No.
guess I'll take the growth instead, which is also not so fun. But I'm not miserable. So there's a win there.
The win, isn't there? Yeah. And I love that humor. I love the way people bring that humor to their growth. There's this Instagram post where people are, they put these funny, there's some character doing this funny dance, and this is me just after speaking to my therapist. Just it's, and I think, yeah, I think if you bring humor into it too, it helps. It helps with that, you know. I remember getting to a point once and thinking, I really need to do any more of this growth stuff? I've had enough. I've had, like, do you really, universe? Is this it? Could you just give me a break? I just,
But
and
wait, there's more.
getting lotto numbers would really help now. It's just, how many million? How did I
Yeah,
spend that
can I just have?
million?
Oh, I don't want growth. Can I have a million instead? Like, can we switch it out this one time, and then I'll go back to the growth next time? Can
Yeah,
I just get
exactly.
$1 million?
Yeah. I need a hug. I need more. Yeah, and I need $1 million. Thank you very much. It's just that wonderful sort of that humor that you can bring to, yeah, and it's everywhere. I watch, I was talking to my son on the phone, and I normally talk to his oldest daughter, and we were talking about something. We'd spent quite a bit of time on the phone, and then he turned around and he went, "Oh no, she's drawing on the table." And I said, "Oh," and I thought, "Oh, this is interesting." I thought, "What's she drawing?" And he goes, "Oh, she's drawing green circles." And I went, "Oh, you're so lucky they're not red jagged lines." Yeah, that's right, exactly. That's exactly right. Tell me about your husband. And the red comes out. I'll tell you about my
Black,
husband.
all black everywhere.
Everything, yeah. And so there's interesting things like that. And he's like, "Why does it matter?" And I said, "Well, she's thinking she might be a bit jealous because you're talking to me, and usually we spend time. It's her and I. We spend a lot of time together." She was only about 3.5 at the time. And I said, it could be a bit of jealousy, but it's more, the circles are more contemplative, more thoughtful. Why is my dad taking so long on the phone when it should be my turn? What is this go? What's really going on here? Yeah. But then
fascinating.
it
So
is, yeah.
are there lines that you can draw between certain shapes that you draw or certain doodles? Because I know, you know, some
Mm.
people like do the same kind of shape all the time when they doodle. Can you draw some lines between like people that do more squares or more squigglies, or does that
Yep,
exist?
absolutely. Yeah.
It's kind of like dream
Um,
interpretation. It like, you
yeah.
know, that's kind of what it's coming to mind.
Yeah, I mean, it's never black and white. Sorry, it's a bit of a pun, isn't it? It's never, like it's if someone else had been drawing green circles, it may just mean desire to be in nature. It may it just and what you choose does actually matter. In my books, I tend to be a bit loose with that because I'm sort of conscious that people don't have an endless budget for art materials. But in reality, if you're suffering from anxiety, if your brain's running 100 miles an hour, I'd probably recommend you use something like gel pens because they're beautiful and fluid, but it makes you have to use them slowly. You can't get a gel pen and go, oh, I've had enough of this and scribble across the page.
Yeah, you get a bunch of skips.
Yeah, you get oh, it's just a mess. Yeah, so and also the shapes people use, as you and the size of the shapes, where they sit on the paper. If you
Oh,
say
fascinating.
Yeah, if you say to somebody, who's perhaps in a dark place, we might be looking at trying to lift their mood and think more positively. So I might say to them, draw yourself in the future. Draw you as a happy, purposeful, calm being. How would that look? And where they draw the size of the image of themselves, where it is sits in the paper. And that's particularly useful when people are, you're talking about relationships. Like draw you with the person that bullied you at school. Draw you with your partner. Draw you with your boss. And again, and it makes sense. So if the figure of themselves is smaller, then that's the unbalanced relationship. If the
Yeah,
figures
that
are the
makes sense.
same, yep, makes sense, doesn't it? If they're lower
Mhm.
on the page, they're a lesser subordinate role. But again, you have to do that with the discussion. That's sort of, well, you get sort of more of a feel about it. And often, if you point things out to people, they'll go, oh yes, this is what that means. I can see that now. Yeah, it's really interesting actually. So it is like I said, we I can say to somebody, or pick up a piece of paper, think about something that's upsetting you, and make marks on the paper, or draw, paint a Mona Lisa. I don't care. Um, but in reality, there's a lot sort of going on underneath. And that's where I suppose, the therapist side comes out. Yeah. So,
Sure, sure. What's been really surprising to you about mindful arts therapy?
I think it's so not many people know much about it. It's about 100 years old as a therapy. Music therapy started in the First World War, was with soldiers returning, to help them deal with pain, and the the conflicts and the horrors, and of course, as we know, we would call it PTSD now.
Right.
There's Adrian Hill, Margaret Narenberg from America, who she worked with children and getting them to draw through their issues. Kids are great, in they don't have any blocks, they don't have any issues with art.
The world hasn't gotten to them yet and told them that they suck at it. That's why.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And then I think that's the biggest barrier is I've worked with, I used to work predominantly with men with mental health issues from drug and alcohol abuse, and they
Mm,
were middle-aged, and so they were quite ingrained, and I and you it was very difficult for them to even pick up a pencil because they've been conditioned to think it was children only did art,
yes.
they're not artistic, so they won't be able to do well. They'll never be able to produce anything of any worth. So all those kind of blocks. And I will always say to people, if you can hold a pencil, you can do art therapy, because even if you're stabbing the page because you've had a really, really bad day, you're doing art therapy. Yeah.
And I find it fascinating because it's a way to, again, like you said, to slow down, become self-aware, um, and name your feelings and then feel through them, which is not something any of us are taught, especially in America. We're
No.
taught to stuff and move. If it gets in the way of hustle culture, it needs to be dealt with
Yeah.
swiftly, and and then on top of it, uh, I was taught to intellectualize instead.
Ah,
So
right.
I spent a million years, at least, I don't know. I think I started feeling my actual feelings maybe a handful of years ago.
Wow.
So, but before then, I was intellectualizing it. I could tell you exactly why I do what I do, why I feel the way
Mm,
I felt, and where it stemmed from, and how to get rid of it, but I wasn't actually like feeling it in my body and moving through it. That was
not
my way of
really.
stuffing it down still.
Yeah.
And that was a huge epiphany. And so what I see with your art therapy is it's yet another way to kind of move through that feeling process, versus intellectualizing it or stuffing it down.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and again, children are very good at this because we don't judge our feelings. We don't. We have to work on behaviors, obviously. So if you're feeling angry, breaking, smashing, or something, hitting somebody, that's not okay. But it's okay to feel angry. I remember last
Mhm.
year I was working and I turned around to a colleague and I went, "Boy, I really feel angry." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." And he was just laughed at me, and I was like, I'm really angry today. Why am I angry? What's upset me today?" You know, and it's, and I kind of, again, that non-judgmental and just sitting with it. It was actually really interesting that what was causing the anger. It was a little bit of feeling that I'd been pushed out of something that I started, a project that I'd started that was being taken over, even though I'd initiated other people to take it over. I wasn't prepared for, I think I wasn't prepared for the community's embracing of how wonderful these people were. And I kind of felt somewhere deep down inside I was being like physically pushed back, and I no longer mattered anymore. And I was a bit cross about that. So, something deep, and I wasn't cross about it because I felt, no, I started this. This is what I wanted. But something else was happening. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
It sounded like a little grief. It sounds like there was a grief process there
absolutely.
of
Yeah, and
like,
that's really important, isn't it? Yeah, to identify that and go, oh well, that's kind of normal, and it should be expected. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's, yeah, it's really, I think it's really lovely that we've got to a stage where we can do this because I was brought up. My father is English, South African. My mother is Irish, Spanish.
Oh,
Um,
you're all buttoned up except for the Spanish part.
I was conceived in France. I was born in England. I've grown up. There was yeah, I'm a real mix up. But we were taught to, you don't show your emotions. We don't talk about emotions because that's weak. And you just suck it up and pull up your socks and get on with your job because you're
Yeah.
British and that's what the British do. They do it
Stiff
really
stiff upper lip.
well. That's right.
Stiff
We're
upper
all
lip.
going through this. We need to be tough bastards. That's what we need to be. And that has its place in a sense, because both my father in particular, my mother passed away last year, but my father's still he's in his mid-90s, and
Good
so
for him.
yeah, that's right. He grew up in the Second World War, and that's what you did. Things.
Yes, that's silent.
Yeah,
That's the silent generation.
yeah,
So they didn't talk about anything. They experienced, it here, the Black Friday, or Black Monday, the stock market crashing in the 20s and causing,
oh,
massive,
terrible.
um,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. So that's how he grew up, and you just
yep.
exact pulled up your bootstraps and got on with it because the
Yeah,
alternative was literally death. Like that was
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
alternative for him.
yeah. Or wallowing in self-pity to the point where you used alcohol to numb. And you still see that today, and particularly with people in that mid 50s range, is that alcohol is They didn't really get into drugs so much. Some did, some didn't. But yeah, using alcohol to numb the pain, and yeah, that's really sad. It's really sad that that's what they had to do because they couldn't cope. Whereas now we have so much more to offer. Um, I think in the community as a whole. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it is interesting. I was speaking to a client earlier today, and I said, "When's the last time you like when what do you like to do? Like, what do you if I said go play a game, what would you play?" And
Mm,
he looked at me like I had two heads, and I was like, Monopoly, Scrabble, Uno, Old
yeah,
Maid, like what game would you like to play? You need to spend time in play
yeah,
in order to reconnect with your joy. And for whatever reason, he said chess, and he was like very good in chess and like almost pro level chess. And I was
wow,
like, that's amazing. Go
yeah.
play a game of chess. And he said, I don't have the time. And
Uh,
I
ch-
said, you don't have the time. I said,
yeah.
what do you mean you don't have the time? He's like, well, to complete a game, it's long. I said, said anything about completion? And
Good.
that threw him off his rocker
Yeah.
because doing anything just to do it with no purpose
Yes. Yeah.
felt like a waste
Yes. Yeah.
of time. And I feel like there's a lot of men out there in their mid 50s, 60s who feel like if it's not productive, I shouldn't do it. If it's not producing something for some reason, that just doing it just because is a waste.
That's right.
Um,
So, and
but
again, it's not appreciating the journey. Yes.
right. And so talk about the journey in art therapy.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody starts with a pen on the back of an envelope,
Yeah.
and then like talk about that for us, please.
Yeah. So if you can do like you can just grab a back an envelope or a newspaper flyer or something and just start with a biro. You might move on to an art journal. And like my art journal, like I've got, I wish I had my camera working because I could show you some image, some of my
I know,
paintings.
me too. Well, it'll be in the description, you guys. So go check it out. Go check it out. But yeah, I wish you. Here we are. Just imagine for right
My
now.
art therapy journal when I was studying and when I use it, kind of looks like something maybe a 5-year-old's put together. It's not a great work of art. It's
Oh,
not,
good.
it's not like these beautiful. When I was studying art, contemporary art, and our facilitators and our lecturers would show us the art journals, and they were like works of art, you know. And I was like, oh, mine doesn't look like that. Mine's got stuff stuck here, and I don't know what this bit's for, and I've forgotten what that is, and Lord knows what this one. and I, but it doesn't matter because it's about the process. It's about doing and experience what you feel and what you experience while you do it. And I said, and I put this in all my books, is that if you feel the need once you've done something, you can chuck it away. There's actually a few of the activities where I don't even really encourage people to set fire to things, but it's something you can do. You can do it in your sink. Um, Australia has a bonfire mentality, so that's okay, but not in a great deal of cultures. Sometimes I imagine people looking at my books at, on the 40th floor of a flat in Germany or something, an apartment building or something. So I think, there's one though that where you write a letter to yourself, or you can use this. You can write a letter to someone that's really hurt you and traumatized you. And it might be somebody that's already passed away. It might be somebody who you have no longer contact with for good reason. But you can write this letter and you can write anything in this letter and you can use as many curse words as you like because what you're going to do is you're going to fold it into an origami boat and you're going to sail it away. And you might do that metaphorically in your bath or your kitchen sink in a sense, or you might even be able to go to a lake or a river, or we all live around some sort of body of water. Yeah, and so all that's part of that journey. It's about releasing stuff, having been heard, and also, you know, and I say in my books, grab a piece of paper, or you can use your art journal. And it doesn't matter because, again, we're not building a great work of art. We're working through things. We're developing and we're growing. Um, and sometimes it's fun. It should be fun too at a level. You should get away and go, I really enjoyed that. I really felt this. I did something. Yeah, useful.
Yeah, one of my coaches said, I feel like you need to color. And I was like, "What?" She goes like, "Yeah, like get a coloring book and color." I was like, "You're absurd." And she's like, "Stacy, listen to me." So, okay, I went and I got 3 coloring books from Amazon, and they're all adult coloring books, so they all have bad words in them because I can. And I got 168 pencils, and occasionally about once a month I'll sit and I'll color a picture, and
Yeah.
with no expectations. And I think I'd like for you to talk about having the
Mm,
expectations, because I know that that took me a long time to get rid of, because what I was doing initially was like, well, that color palette looks dumb, and why would that house be red next to a purple, people eater? Like, I was absolutely ripping myself apart. And it was because of the expectations of having a Monet and it's actually looking like a Pollock. So both are fantastic artists, you guys. That's kind of my point, is like, it doesn't always have to be Monet. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
Goya. It could be a Pollock. It could be a Kandinsky. It could be a Van Gogh.
yeah,
All of those are vastly different, but very well renowned artists. So talk about expectations and how it gets in
yeah.
the way.
It does get in the way, and these are the rules and boundaries that we were taught. We've put on ourselves that we understand with. Um, yeah. So I often work with in like we use warm colors if we need cheering up, yellow, red, orange. But we might use the cool colors if we need calming down. So whatever mental state you're in, whatever, if you've got a particular issue, a mental health issue, different colors will affect your mood, and we know that because just research advertising, colors in advertising. That will blow your mind if you haven't
Oh
already.
yeah. The psychology behind marketing. Oh my
Oh,
God.
oh gosh, yeah, that's a whole new podcast, million years
Oh,
worth.
for sure.
So it's, yeah, and I'll often say, let's do a pink tree, and I watch, engage, and I think I really feel for people that can't do that, because I think, goodness, what's really happening here? What's really going on? I was participating in an art class, and it was a bit like paint pouring. And I've forgotten the name, and I apologize. It's a Japanese type, and you put in drops, and the paint runs, and it's just fabulous. It just looks gorgeous, and it's on special paper. And there were two women there, renowned landscape artists, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't let go of the fact that they couldn't control the outcome. And I
Oof.
thought, that's sad. That's really sad. And so you need to, for people, like, clients like that, it's about breaking down things just step by step. Because if you really need to control paint and how it moves on a canvas, you're going to have a lot of issues in life. Things are not going to work out the way you want. You're not going to get exactly what you want in life, ever. Nobody does, sadly. Unfortunately, I should say, too, sometimes. And so you need to accept the flow, accept that the universe is not prepared to give you what you want, or God, or whatever you feel. And it's just about that, accepting that. I don't know, that I suppose maybe we could say embracing the imperfections of life,
Yeah, sure.
really, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. And I think, you and I both worked with disabled dogs. So, you know, I do a lot of work with disabled people. And it's about seeing past the disability and seeing that this is a really unique human being here who may not be able to toilet themselves, may not be able to speak, may not be able to pick and drink out of a cup without wearing most of the contents. Um, but they have yeah, it's extraordinary that there's a sort of like a beauty inside that. And yeah, and I think that's, I think about accepting that is also about us letting our controls go. Is that or our expectations about other people. So, and when we're doing, yeah, when we're doing that, and I think part of that, like I mentioned, you can throw your artwork away. Do you know how hard it is to throw your artwork away? It's,
Listen, I've had artwork up on my fridge from my kid from like, I don't know, 6 years ago. And I finally, a couple weekends ago, I was like, it's too, I can't, it's too much. It's overstimulating now. It was noisy on my fridge.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I gathered them up while he wasn't home, gathered them up, put them in the bin. He
Ah,
came, he came home. I was like 24 hours later. Where's my stuff? I was like, fuck. I said, Garrett, it's been there for like 6 years, bro. Like it was wrinkly, it was getting in the way, it had stains on it. It's time to let it go. And he was like, not happy about it at all. But like it was beautiful. It served its purpose. And now I have a clear fridge on the bottom and I feel so much better. So, but I would like, yeah, I have oodles and oodles of folders with their stuff in it from kindergarten, first grade. Like, at what point do I
you
just throw it
exactly,
away?
throw it away. Yeah,
Just
and
throw
it's
it
really
away.
hard. Once you have grandchildren, it's harder. Yeah.
Oh yeah, my nephew like swindled me out of $2 for a rainbow painting in July. And I was like, of course, buddy, here's your $2, And he's like, here you go, Aunt Stacy. So yeah, that still is up there.
Yeah.
My kid's stuff is
Oh, you
gone,
paid
but
for
my
that.
nephew, I
You want
paid
to get your
for
money's
it.
worth out of that.
I mean, yes. And I told him, now you are a paid artist, kiddo.
That's
Don't
right,
ever let
exactly.
anybody tell you differently.
That's brilliant.
Man,
Yeah, but yeah,
he's an entrepreneur before his time.
is that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, my grandson hates art and anything to do with art, and my mum would, sorry, his my daughter would pick him up and say, "Oh, did you do anything?" No, 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 no. And he climbed in the back of the car and he launched this painting at her. It was all folded up, and he's about 4 or 5. He just started school, and she opened it up, and she's, "Oh, this is lovely," and she started talking about it. He's like, "I don't know. I don't know." I was asking her questions. "I don't know. I don't know." And she said, "Harry, didn't you draw this?" And he went, "No." And she goes, "Well, whose is it?" "Oh, Ahmed. Ahmed, the kid sitting next to him, drew it for me." And he said, and we just laughed. No, not only did he outsource it, he outsourced it to some poor Indian kid. It's just, it probably cost him half of his lunch. I mean, oh, I never laughed. So, and she's
Oh my,
never asked for anything. She said that was me done. I thought she said,
that is
isn't
hilarious.
that
He
funny?
outsourced.
He outsourced it. God, we were thinking, oh my goodness, yeah. And he's not a particularly entrepreneurial kid. He's one of these happy-go-lucky kids. He loves sport. Yeah, it was just, but art's not his thing, and but he found a way. You got to give him his due. He found a way to meet the needs of his mother.
Well, that was my 3-year-old brother. So there was 7 years between us. So I was 10 and he was 3, and I had to do some drawing for, whatever reason, for a story or whatever. And I could not do even the simplest stick figure without it looking very wonky. And so I asked my 3-year-old brother to do it. And that has been the running family joke for 30 plus years now, about how Stacy had her 3-year-old brother do stick figures for her, even though she was in the whatever grade that is,
Yeah.
third, fourth grade, and he was 3. So I get Harry. I get Harry on a really deep level there. It was my 3-year-old brother instead.
Oh, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And
but
I,
it's interesting because that also stuck with me in a negative way.
oh,
Of like, because it became the family joke of like, don't ask Stacey to draw anything, have she has her little brother do it. And while funny now, when you're
yeah,
10 and you feel insecure about what you're doing,
that's
and then
right.
that
Yeah.
becomes the joke.
No, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that will bleed into everything else you do, won't it? It can be quite overwhelming, and that's
Yeah.
it's really difficult. It can be really, really difficult. Yeah.
And so I told myself at that point, I'm not a creative. I'm not
Mm,
creative. That
yeah.
was the story that came out of that. I'm not creative. I'm not creative. And even to this day, I will say I'm not creative in the traditional
Mm,
aspects. I'm creative in I hear what people aren't saying. I'm creative and I hear when I'm coaching in sessions and I come up with some, like the guy I was saying, like, go play chess just to
mm,
play. And he about lost his head. And I'm like, no, seriously, go play with no other reason but then to play. And so I'm creative in that aspect, but not traditionally creative. And I just wonder if I hadn't had that story, if I
mm,
if I would have pursued a more traditional creativity. I love museums. I love art. I think it's
mm,
beautiful. Go put me in the Louvre or the Prado and I'm happy.
yeah.
Happy. But like for me to do it,
Yeah, that's really
mm-mm.
interesting, isn't it? Yeah. But you are creative. Look how you've made a life and you've made creative changes to your life. And we need creativity. And I think people underestimate the term scientists have to be creative. They see a problem, they have to create solutions. And so that it's off. I think it's a term that's somebody coming into the house. It's the cats. Um, I think it's a term that people tend to exclusively think about visual arts. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'm going to be creative and I'm going to paint a picture. But
Yeah,
you can be
or
creative,
musical,
yeah, or
oh, I can play a guitar or I can songwrite
yeah,
lyrics. I can songwrite, melodies. That's creative.
yeah.
Me.
So I've always been lucky because I've always been artsy. But you can be creative in your garden. I had a lady say to me, "I'm not creative," and I saw her backyard, and it was all set out beautifully. There was a little section here for drinking coffee in the morning. There was a little section there for the veggies, and I said, "Look at this! Look how creative you are." And she kind of laughed and brushed it off. And I thought, we can be creative by keeping order, by having having our home decorated in the way that suits us and the way that reflects what we find is important. You can be creative if you've got to get from A to B in a certain time and you want to avoid traffic.
That's
um,
very true. I do that in Las Vegas all the time.
I bet it will. So I think we underestimate the term. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And I think you've been creative, even though we only just met. I'm hearing your creativity is coming out in all different sorts of ways.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah, but it's
Thank you.
again, we don't stretch. We don't really use the definition of creativity as well as we should. And that's one of the barriers we find to art therapy is that people go, I can't do that, can't draw. And yet it can be really powerful because you don't have to talk. So you can, and you may feel anxious and you may feel worried or you might even be depressed and you might not know why. So you can't go to a therapist, a traditional psychotherapist, and say, oh, look, when I was 5, this happened.
Right.
Um, but your subconscious knows. And art or music, any of the creative therapies will help you express it. And a therapist will help you move on from it. So that's really
That's
interesting. Yeah.
the beauty of the world's what am I trying interconnecting right there between art and therapy and creativity and therapy. And
Yeah.
so if somebody wants to work with you, how do they find you? What do they do? Tell them all the things.
Oh, well, I'm a bit of a social media whore. I do love to get out and about.
I love you. I love that you just said that. That's awesome.
Oh,
My people.
it's it, isn't it? Yeah. People are like, particularly my age, are like so down on social media, and I'm secretly sitting there going, I love it. I love. It's a good way to like. I've connected with people overseas, my relatives, that I would never know. God, even know where they live because my
This
family.
is how we
Yeah.
connected in a podcasting group. There's no other way that I would have known you. So
No.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So I have a website, of course. I've just had a big revamp last month, which was really exciting. So it's
Yay.
mindfularts with an s therapy.com.au because I'm in Australia. Mindful arts therapy is where I'm all over Instagram and Facebook, trying to dip my finger into TikTok and a little bit on YouTube.
Come to the dark side. We love a good TikTok around here
Yeah.
and YouTube shorts.
Oh, what are all these emojis for? Um,
So much fun. I love TikTok and YouTube shorts. Love
yeah,
them.
it's really interesting, isn't it? It's a whole new thing. I love that different generations have created different social platforms. I know at the moment I'm working with a lot of Gen Z girls in the 20s, and they're just amazing. They're kind, they're empathetic, they're intelligent, they're
I
switched on.
know. I
We had a
know.
bad rough with a client once, and one of the girls, she's only 22, she walked in and she said, "I feel your energy's a bit off today, Sue." It's like,
The vibes are not checking. The vibes are off. Do you know my two? Yeah. No, the vibes are off. When I'm not. Mm-mm. I'm like, what? Get in there.
and I'm
Oh no,
like,
the
"You
vibes.
went for break
Mm-mm.
time, and I'll tell you what's happened, honey. I was really fired up. I'll give you energy off." I said, so yeah, I have on my logo is it's a coloured bird that's just taking off. So that sense of lifting yourself up. You know how birds will flap their wings in before they go out, so that that uplifting, moving forward, upwards, onwards. Yeah, that's my. So
That's cool.
come and chat
That's
with me.
cool. Yeah, so you guys go find her again, Mindful Arts with an S, therapy.au, because she is an Aussie. And so everything's linked in the description below. Y'all already know. Talking about social media, I don't need to tell y'all these things. It's 2024. If you're watching this, you have some knowledge of how this works.
Absolutely.
And so, with that being said, go like, subscribe, do all the, YouTubey things that you know to do, please, because my whole idea of having this is to get more and more people on here so you guys know, the audience knows what kind of resources are out there
Mm.
for you. Maybe not traditional talk therapy isn't for everybody. It just
No, no,
isn't.
no.
And so there are things like, mindful arts therapy. There are things like meditation. There's things like coaching. There's things like
Mm.
accountability buddies. Like that's the whole reason for this podcast. And the more that you guys like, subscribe, and share, the better it does in reach. And that is so important to me because this is part of my purpose in life is to create a ripple effect. And so having people like
Absolutely.
Susan on help me do that. And
Yeah.
so Susan, thank you for your
Oh,
time and your
my pleasure.
energy and your little picture. Um,
I was
listen,
mucking
we just
around when that photograph was taken. I was having all these really professional photos, and someone said something, and I looked over my glasses, and I said, "Really?" And that was just the shot. It just goes to show you, it was a money shot.
yeah, exactly. I have a sneaking suspicion that's like quintessential you.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm like,
I
yeah,
mean, it's perfection. It's perfection then. And mine is very much like me. Like me.
terrific.
So,
Yeah, love it. I
red
see it.
and
Very powerful.
fiery. So
Yes, exactly.
all right, you guys, if this is interested in you at all, go hang out with Susan. At the very least, have a chat with her and just
Yeah.
see. Again, she specializes in preteens. However, as we've heard, she serves many populations. And so maybe if therapy hasn't worked for you, or you're worried about your child, and maybe you don't want to get into traditional therapy for whatever reason, go try her out. There is no harm, no foul in trying a different modality that maybe you just haven't heard or been open to before. It could be the key.
Yeah, you just never know, do you? Just never how people find that thing that makes them shine, and that's what we all need to do. We all need to shine. Shine, shine,
Oh,
shine.
we all deserve it. We all deserve it. So thank you so much, you guys. Remember, it just takes a few short minutes of mindfulness, whether it's
Mhm.
mindful art or just mindfulness in general, to physically rewire. And I'm not kidding when I say this, you rewire the neural pathways in your brain. And
Yeah,
that leads to better thinking, better emotions, and you create your experience around those habits and emotions and behaviors. And so that's what makes up life. So just a few short minutes a day, that's all it takes. And if you need help with that, come find me, come find Susan.
absolutely.
We
Yeah,
are here
yeah.
to create this for you and with you and um, help you human better for
Yeah,
sure.
It's a great phrase. I like that.
I'll be even
I'm
better
doing
for
it
sure.
in the book at the moment.
Exactly. So, all right, guys, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Mwah. I love y'all. Bye bye.